Well, I think we can probably get started. I'll call the Plan Commission meeting to order. Everybody have a chance to take a look at the minutes.
I will move to approve.
Oh, well, there's a lot of people on there.
Got a motion and second to approve the minutes. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. First up is discussion and possible action on a concept development plan review for Meyer Road Apartments, Landfill LLC.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight we have a concept development plan in front of us. First, I want to go through a project history for this site, though, before we dig into what they're currently proposing. So that being the case, I'll dive right in. So in August of 2018, an initial application was brought forward to rezone the property from Ag Res to RM1 multiple family residential with a comp plan amendment to high density residential in order to allow for a 144 unit building to be located here. However, the application was withdrawn by the applicant due to the Plan Commission's recommendation of denial to the Common Council. The basis of the denial was that the proposed use to high density residential was inconsistent with the 2009 comprehensive plan. Later in November of 2018, the same year, the property was approved to be rezoned to B2 general commercial and retained the comprehensive plan land use designation of general commercial with the idea of constructing a mixed use building with a maximum 36 units as per municipal code requirements listed in our code, or else they would also allow the construction of commercial business to be there as well. Then in October 2019, the Plan Commission approved a rezoning from B2 general commercial to RM2 multiple family residential and a comprehensive plan amendment from general commercial to medium density residential as a developer presented an intention to construct an 88 unit apartment complex. At this time, staff had then explained that if the applicant were desirous of changing from a residential condo project to a residential apartment project in the future, the new zoning would still allow for that to be a possibility. I'd also like to highlight too that we did have a traffic analysis study done at this site around the beginning of the whole project in 2018, May 2018 to be exact. The measures that were calculated in this were to basically figure out what the transit impact would be on the area, and it included other studies that were involved as well, such as the Carmichael Road corridor study, and it also included other developments that were nearby, such as like those that are north of I-94, along with like the St. Croix Meadows development site. So that, oh yeah, the study included developments of Summit Ridge as well. In the study, it proposed 25 units for the Summit Ridge portion, which is like the western portion of the Lee property. And that was 25 units, and that was as proposed. So that's currently existing and is true to the traffic study. Whereas the South Point project, which includes all those twin homes and the row homes, that accounted for 14 units more than what's been approved. So the study actually allocated a few more into its recommendations than what was received. And then also for lot 31, which is what we're looking at now, it was actually reviewed in the traffic study as high residential, meaning it would have had per the plan, 165 dwelling units. Study also included impacts from other development projects, like I said. Basically, it concluded that improvements should be made at the intersections of Marin O'Keefe, Marin Industrial, Marin Aspen, and Marin River Ridge, utilizing like stop sign control, new pavement markings, and construction of full access driveways onto Mare Road. No immediate improvements were recommended for the intersection of Mare and Carmichael. However, traffic signals were later recommended to be installed in 2029. So something to think about. now we can dive into like the actual what's being proposed. So that being said, the lot is 5.33 acres in size and is located at the end of the cul-de-sac on South Point Drive, as well as the corner of Mayor Road and Carmichael Road. The project proposes an 85-unit apartment building, 3 stories tall, with underground and surface parking availability. The building footprint, as proposed, would be 28,642 square feet, and the overall building size would be 113,354 square feet. It also includes a fitness room, party room, lobby, reception, entry room, and an outdoor patio with accessibility to 2 fenced-in green spaces, one to serve as a children's play area and the other to serve as a dog park. As far as the comp plan, land use designation, it is currently still set for medium density residential, meaning no more than 16 dwelling units per acre shall be constructed on the property. With that being said, the applicant is proposing a density of 15.94 dwelling units per acre with the 85 units that they're proposing. So with that being said, staff did send off comments to the applicant for them to review. But in the meantime, staff is recommending approval of the concept development plans with the listed conditions on your issue sheet.
Hello?
Yep.
Yes.
Speak up.
So first, are any questions, any comments on the part of the Plan Commission members?
I do have some on, I guess it's kind of, one leads to the other, so I don't know if I want to start. I'm concerned about walking traffic crossing. If who's the market for these apartments for? Where are they going to be playing? You know, it'd be natural for them to want to get to the school from that area. How is all that going to be handled and addressed so that doesn't become a problem, noting that it's right on Carmichael? And then those 2 ponds that are going to be right on the other side of it also. What's going to be done to make that not an issue, be safe? So I guess a bunch of questions.
Get out of there. Sorry, I got a puppy.
So who's going to answer those, Nick? You got the developers on here.
I do, Mr. Mayor. And you know, first of all, let me start by thanking the commission for taking time to take a look at this. This is really phase 3 in this process with Summit Ridge, South Point, and now the development of this 5.3 acre parcel. As Tiffany went through the history of this project, we've looked at a number of different uses here. And we've settled on the use that is in conformance with the comp plan and with zoning, and so we're not asking for any entitlement changes. This is simply here for development plan review at this time. Let me speak to the market first. So we have 85 units. Which fits within the density here that's been allotted for this particular parcel. Of that, 14 of the units will be studio, 37 will be 1 bedroom, and then 34 will be 2 bedrooms, a combination of 2 bedroom interior and 2 bedroom corner or 2 corner units. The rents for these apartments will all be market. On the low end with the studios or the efficiencies, the monthly rent is projected to be right around $1,000 a month at $1,025. And the larger units are projected to rent at about $1,700 a month or $1,725. As it was indicated, there was a comprehensive market or traffic analysis done in 2018, which planned for or studied the development of this property at in excess of 160 units. It also studied South Point at in excess of what's being built there, and Summit Ridge at what's been approved. So the traffic study and the traffic analysis overstudied the density of this property. And as a result, the city directed us to make all the improvements which you see happening out on Mayor right now, which includes a complete reconstruct of Mayor Road and sidewalks and crossings and whatnot. And so the city really accounted for all of those crossing related issues when the Summit Ridge and South Point developments were approved in terms of the layout, in terms of all the improvements that were required by your capital cost study. And the developer at that time agreed to make all of those improvements. And I'm sure Mike or Tiffany can speak to the work that was required, the plan that was required as part of that particular process. It doesn't appear at this time that any additional public improvements have been required by the city, as all of that was taken into account previously. Which then leaves the last question regarding the drainage piece of this. And we've worked on a couple of different layouts in terms of how we site the building, where the drainage goes, and how we make sure this site lays out as both we would like it and as the city would like it. We proposed a couple of different configurations, and the configuration that you have with the L shape open on both the Carmichael side and on the Mayor side was the configuration that was preferable to both the developer and the city, from the perspective of sight lines, from the perspective of not blocking the views of the residents on the Mayor side, which then resulted in the drainage being along the Carmichael side. In terms of making sure that those are maintained and safe, they'll be like other drainage ponds within the city, and like what you have in the other part of the development, to ensure that they're maintained, and to make sure that they work and function as they would customarily. So that's the overall site plan, that the market and the goal of this particular piece. And I'm certainly happy to take any additional questions. I do have Dick Morris, who is the principal of the development group, on as well, and I'm sure that Dick would be happy to answer any questions you might have as well.
May I keep going though with my question? Yes, you answered everything going east or north from the development, but what about any foot traffic leaving from that going out onto Carmichael? If there's kids in those units, is there enough park space in that area? Are they going to be walking along Carmichael up to the school to go into their playgrounds? That type of thing. That's the part I would like to hear, some type of answer to, please. Foot traffic, not, the vehicular traffic. I think you've done a great job. I mean, you've done everything that's been asked of you, and, your explanation obviously says that. It's just the stuff you can't control, foot traffic. And there'll be some, that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the YMCA is there too. I mean, they'll be going down to that, and holy cow, there's just all kinds of little enticements there to get out on that road and walk down it. The beach, St. Croix Beach is down, further, the county park and all of that. So I guess I noting how the speed limits through that area and everything like that, I think that would be a very dangerous area for people to be walking along that road.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm sorry, go ahead.
If you take a look at the site plan that's been provided by AEC, and I'm specifically looking at page 3 of 9, there's a proposed path that runs along Mayor and then south down Carmichael. And so as you look at that document, now of course we can only deal with our site here, and so we've got crossings that head to the north so that folks can walk to the north, but then we have the community interconnected with South Point, and you'll see that trail running on the south side of Mayor along the entire length of this particular property, and then it turns and heads south to address the exact question that you're asking. Commissioner York, and that will then take those walkers and bikers down toward the YMCA property. Whether there are any additional plans along the Y property to connect or for connecting trails into the St. Croix Meadows or down through Rivercrest, I'm not certain how that all will connect up. But for the purposes of dealing with this piece of the trail connection and this piece of the city's ped shed plan, this property is completely connected with this bituminous path that takes us along the north side of this property all the way along the east side to the southeast corner of the property.
No, I understand, and you're doing everything you can on your property to address my question. I do understand that. It's just I'm looking at the bigger picture, and you're in the middle of the bigger picture. That's why I'm asking the question.
And Fred, Pat Casanova here. In parks, we've been having that same discussion about that whole quadrant out there of what we do in the future to try and handle the children, the pedestrian traffic, the magnet of the school, and the why, how we, with parks, handle all of that.
Okay. Well, if something's being done, hey, but then.
Well, I'm not sure it's saying something's being done. The questions are being asked. That's all.
Okay.
The other part of this too is that we and I think this was the city's desire, but there's no particular interest in bringing that path down to the corner of Carmichael and Mayor. So the goal here in that northeastern part of the bend, the northeastern part of our property, is to keep those pedestrians as far away from Carmichael for as long as we can. So you see where that trail turns south. That's well away from the actual intersection of Mayor and Carmichael, trying to keep those pedestrians as safe as we can for as long as we can.
There are future plan connections heading south where that terminus is currently shown on the west side of Carmichael at the property line, the southern boundary, to the county bike ped plan, as well as the city bike ped master plan that's currently being drafted, would be to connect down to the tunnel that goes underneath Carmichael. So traverse through the Y Camp property down to the tunnel to connect to Rivercrest in the future.
Thank you. That answers part of it anyway. It's being worked on. That's all I had.
Anybody else?
I have a question for you. It's Roger Waltz. You did this traffic study. I'm not sure what time of the day they do it or went back 2 years ago, but there's a lot more traffic. We live on O'Keefe in Stone Creek, and there's a lot of people fly through there morning and night because they don't want to go down Carmichael and turn. So I'm just curious there's got to be a stoplight put somewhere or a four-way stop on O'Keefe, because you go out here in the morning, there's a lot more traffic, and I think you're thinking it's going to be with the new development over here, and now if you're going to add this, I don't know how many cars you're talking about here. You're probably talking, 150 more vehicles. I don't know, 100, 150. I'm not sure. You're going to have people driving, coming right. We got our road is private. So they'll be flying through there. They'll be going down along the river. You just come up there on Mayor in the morning, about 5, 6 o'clock, and see what you see. People flying down through here, 40, 45 miles an hour, motorcycles coming in and out. And and on Carmichael, you try to get out there about 5:36 in the morning off of Mayor, and it's a joke. So I think there needs to be something done. You can't be putting stuff in without some infrastructure first. I don't think you guys are, you got the cart before the horse here. You're going to build something, but then you're going to put in stoplights in 9 years. That doesn't make sense. I guess that's all I have to say. I just don't understand. You can't put in stuff before you even.
Hey, Roger, I can speak to that. In the study for the existing peak hour traffic volumes, I think that's what you're requesting to know more about. They mentioned that the weekday morning peak hours are between 6 and 9 a.m. and the weekday afternoon peak hours are between 3 and 6 p.m. So as far as like trip generation goes, you said the proposed residential development is expected to generate approximately 160 new trips, 30 in and 130 out during the weekday morning peak hour, and approximately 195 new trips, meaning 125 in and 70 out during the afternoon peak hour. So on a typical weekday, the proposed development is expected to generate approximately 2,010 new trips, 1,005 in, 1,005 out.
This was done, can you hear me, Roger, again? This was done before the Phillips was put in, though. The Phillips
But this took that
corporation
into
over there,
account,
a lot of
though.
changes since, a lot more traffic since Phillips been put in. I don't think you've done 2018. That thing's just been input about a year ago. There is a lot more traffic here than there was 2 years ago. Yeah, so I think you need to do a little bit more look. Somewhere along the line, you need to put a stoplight in or a four-way stop, maybe on Hanley, because Hanley, try to get across Hanley at night about 5 o'clock across Carmichael. It's almost impossible. I've seen a lot of people almost get in accidents because people flying down there, they're not driving the speed limit, first of all, and you can't get across there. So people are going through residential areas to try to get to different spots. So I think you better do some more studying on your traffic. You add another 160 cars plus the Phillips over there. I think you better do another study on that.
Mr. Mayor, and to that point, I think it's actually important to read the traffic study, which, as was pointed out, incorporates all of the housing developments and from the Lee property. So it incorporates the 25 housing units in Summit Ridge, all of the proposed townhome units in South Point, and 165 units on this particular parcel. In addition to that, it also takes into account the future traffic calculations for, I believe, the next decade. So understand the concerns that have been raised, but all of those issues have been studied. And here's the last point that I think is really important for the commission's consideration. That is that density is really an appropriate discussion when you're talking about comprehensive planning and when you're talking about zoning, because you're talking about the number of units and you're talking about the density and the impact on the surrounding community. The city council has already made decisions on the comprehensive plan and the zoning for this property. And so while it's an interesting discussion, and it's certainly one that should be had and considered, it doesn't impact on this development plan review, which is really about the look and the feel and the layout of the proposed development. The density discussion has been had, it's been studied, and when the city council approved this entire development, it took into account the study back in 2018. And so again, I appreciate the comments, but to really focus the commission on what its task is with the development plan application, it's to look at the look, feel, layout, and to make a determination based upon what's been proposed.
All due respect, Nick, this is Randy, District 1. I agree with Roger that we need to take a look. I've been against traffic studies all the time. You know that. I think that they're narrow-sighted, and we are doing our job by looking for the best interest of the people that live in that area. You can have all the reports you want. You can have all the statistics you want. I don't care. I'm listening to Roger and the rest of the folks up there, and they're saying they need some more information. We need to look at that. I have no problem having Hanley and Hanley and O'Keefe come to public safety for another review of possible stop sign, a four-way stop at that intersection. And also I would address the Bear Road and Carmichael intersection of putting stoplights there. I would agree with Roger. It's a mess up there. So Nick, with all due respect, I'd like to see it come to public safety, those two issues, if this was to move forward.
Well, and certainly those are fair considerations. But again, I draw you back to the application here and what this application involves for consideration purposes. And that is that the council has looked at this particular issue, and it's certainly within the city's rights to review traffic, but it's not necessarily within the purview when you're looking at, and I direct you back to the city's code as it relates to development review applications and the purpose of this particular application. So I don't think anybody is opposed to the residents or the public safety reviewing what happens on Mayor Road, but that should not detract from this process of looking at the site plan for this particular building, because the city has already approved the density for this particular parcel.
Nick, I was there.
I don't think anybody's fighting on that. It's just the safety of the area in general needs to be looked at, what Randy is trying to say, and it does affect you. But as far as what you've done everything right. It's the area. It's not just you. So that's maybe why the stop thing, like Randy's saying, needs to be done, because you're in order. It's the rest of the area.
Randy, hasn't public safety already looked at this prior to the council approving this moving forward?
Not on this issue, no. Which intersection you're talking?
Well, the three that you were mentioning that you want to have further study, wasn't that already done before this project got this far down the road?
I don't recall, but I do believe we talked about Hanley and Carmichael, or Hanley and O'Keefe, putting a four-way there. And at the time, we didn't have enough data to make a good decision.
You didn't have the traffic study done by then?
That was it was brought to us by a different issue.
Oh.
But as far as Mayor Road and Carmichael, I think we briefly touched on that and putting stoplights there, but we were more focused down the road on Bracken and Carmichael.
Okay.
Where the lights are stubbed out to go there.
Mm-hmm.
And the challenge here is that an applicant can only bring a study before the city. The city required us back when those decisions were made to have a traffic study done. And ostensibly, the reason that the traffic study was done, number one, was to determine density, but then secondarily to feed into your capital cost study, where ultimately your capital cost study determined what improvements needed to be made to Mayor Road, to Carmichael, to O'Keefe, and to Industrial. And that study then became the basis, became the playbook for all the improvements that we had to make. For example, we had to build in sidewalks. We had to build in trails. We had to build in crossings. We had to build in all of these things because of the traffic that was going to be generated by this particular development. And it wasn't just Summit Ridge, and it wasn't just South Point, but it was also the development on this 5.33 acre parcel. And so to say that at the time the city did not have the information is the opposite of what was provided, and is the opposite of what your procedure was, which was to require the applicant to do this study, which then was incorporated in the city's very own capital cost study, which told us what we needed to do. And I can guarantee you, having worked on a number of other projects, that if the study would have come back, and if the capital cost study would have come back and said that you need to put a stoplight in, for example, the city isn't shy about saying in its capital cost studies that developers have to put in stoplights or stop signs or other traffic calming mechanisms. And instead, what this study reported, even with a higher density than what we're proposing here, is that there is no stoplight that's required at Mayor and Carmichael until 2029, and it did not require any other traffic calming measures other than what the city required us to do. And so I have a difficult time at this point looking at this and saying we need to revisit the traffic on Mayor Road, because the city required, and I forget what the number was, but it was something in the neighborhood of 1.3 or 1.4 million dollars in capital improvements to Mayor Road, building out for the anticipated traffic, which includes this 5.3 acre parcel. And so I understand the concern of the residents, but again, from a policy perspective, this all was debated, discussed, and when the developer agreed to invest in all of the capital improvements, we did exactly what the city told us to do and what the city required us for improvements for this entire site, including the 5.33 acres.
I think in listening to the whole argument and looking at everything that's come to date on the project, that to hold you guys up on the project is moving the finish line for the race. You've done everything that the city has asked you to do. You've played a straightforward role with planning to put the trails where they're supposed to end up and where they're supposed to be, and to anticipate what was going to come. As a developer, that was all done months ago. And now to want to hold that up because we've become more conscious of the traffic problems, I don't think that's the developer's problem. I think it's just bringing to the forefront what the city needs to do on our side of things to deal with it. But they've developed the property according to the plan and the information and the studies that we had at the time. And had they developed this corner first, it wouldn't be an issue.
I have a question. This is Michael Reisdorf and Stone Creek. You talked about Carmichael and Mayor Road. What about the road going into Industrial Road, Industrial Park, Industrial Road? You only have one road going out with those twin homes and all that. You only got one road. Do all those people along there that are buying, do they know that what's going to be proposed there? There's going to be a lot of traffic coming out of that road onto Mayor Road. And then last year or 2 years ago, when this whole proposal started, I went to the meeting, and the mayor had thought that he was going to put in a roundabout there and straighten out Carmichael. Well, that hasn't been done. You come over that hill in the wintertime and there's cars backed up against a red light, you're going to have a problem there with cars rear-ending each other. So, I mean, that's all got to be addressed.
I would disagree with, I don't know where you got the idea, Nick or Pat, that I suggested you're going to pay for four-way stoplights.
I didn't suggest anything on that.
That is not what I'm talking about. It's our responsibility, Pat, as you said, but we have to obviously watch out for the safety of that whole area, the whole city, et cetera, et cetera. Nick, I did not suggest that you pay for it. So I don't know why you would even say that, but either here nor there, it needs to be looked at. The residents are telling us, and that's our job. I don't care about what the report said or about how it goes. We're listening to the people that live in the area, Nick. And if you dismiss that, that's wrong.
Yeah, and Randy, I don't dismiss it at all, but I think what's being lost here are the appropriate considerations at the appropriate time. My comments related to the capital cost study, and you know this as well as I do, and whether it's this site or whether it's Vine and Carmichael or wherever else in the city, when the city completes its capital cost studies, that transportation component incorporates everything that needs to be done in order to adequately address traffic, parking, pedestrians, and the entire, both the vehicular travel pattern and the ped shed. And so when we go back, and by the way, when a developer asks to develop a piece of property, the city generally doesn't say, well, you take these costs and the city will agree to pay for a separate percentage. Instead, what the city says, not just Hudson, but most cities that we work with, it says, if you want to develop this piece of property, you're going to pay for the roads, you're going to pay for the signs, the lights, the trails, the sidewalks. And so when we went through this comprehensive plan to start this process back with Summit Ridge and South Point, the city studied all of those things. So I'm not dismissing what the residents are saying at all. What I'm saying really dovetails with what Pat said, which is to go back and now start in on a different part of the process where the city has studied this. And I understand that you don't care for studies. We can agree to disagree on their value, but all that I can work on behalf of my clients is what a disinterested engineer tells me and presents me with, and what the city incorporates into its capital cost study. That's the only thing that we can work from. And if somebody says, well, I don't agree because I have a different perspective, because I live there and I see it differently, I can tell you that these engineers study the peak hours. They study the 8-hour travel patterns. And obviously you want good information. You have a traffic engineer that you engage to review these traffic studies. And all we can do is move forward with the best information that we have, and not anecdotal stories about how busy it is. I understand that those concerns are real, but we work through these studies and we work in partnership with the city, and that's what we've done here. And so to move the goalposts at this point to say we want to go back and take a look at something that's been studied, from my perspective, it's just not the appropriate time in the process to do that. We've done everything that you've asked of us on the traffic side. I don't disagree that it might be time to go back and take a look, and the city may want to make some improvements to how the traffic flows, and that's okay. What I'm asking is that you not hold up the process when you have a property that's been zoned and appropriately and is being proposed to be used consistent with the comprehensive plan, where the developer has already put in these improvements. And I would say, to Pat's point, had we developed this outlot first, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation, because those improvements would be in and we'd be dealing with Summit Ridge on the other end. But because this is the third in line, it's now coming back for conversation. But those discussions we've already worked through, and the developer, again, has done everything that you've asked of it.
And what I'm saying, having been on the developer side of the business, we as a planning commission accepted the densities with the townhouses. We accepted the densities with this building when we approved the plan. Had we tied it to the intersection or doing something different then, we wouldn't have accepted the plan coming in. But we've accepted the plan. They have met everything that we asked them to do on it. Yes, the issue of how the corner is going to be dealt with from here on out has now been exacerbated. But I don't think the developer, that's the developer in this case's problem.
It's part of it.
Can I comment, please?
Yes, please.
I feel Nick is in order with his comments, and the reason for me raising this entire subject was not to create the tussle that we have tonight, but to draw attention to the fact that maybe there are a few things we need to get fixed here, which we've obviously had lots of discussion on. There's a period of time of construction from approval from tonight until these things actually hit the market and are causing issues, which I'm going to guess is at least a year. So I think to proceed on this issue, and with knowing that we've got a year to fix whatever we think is wrong is still a fair situation, and it makes everybody happy.
I agree with Fred.
Gets what they want.
Can I say something? My name is Barbara Kaiser, and I live on Stone Creek. What Michael Reisdorf was saying with the new South Point and the other homes in there, whatever they're called, the only exit is onto Industrial Road. So you're going to have all these people exiting on Industrial. Where is with the new apartment building, where is that exit going to be? Is that to enter and exit, is it going to be on Mayor Road or Carmichael Road?
Mayor.
Okay, Mayor and what?
And the Old County Road F, which is that industrial?
That's Carmichael.
It's the old industrial.
Old F is O'Keefe.
Okay.
No, so the way this lines up, and this is a site plan that we had discussed with the city. So the exit will be on to Mayor Road. The exit lines up with Brookstone Circle. And there is also an outlet on the other side of the property where it connects up with South Point Drive as another additional exit that can move vehicles that way. Now, do we expect most of the vehicles to exit out onto Mayor Road? Certainly. But there are two different access points to this parking lot.
So when they exit onto Mayor Road, where are they going to go from there? They're going to go down O'Keefe, which is going to be super congested, which people already are doing, or else they're going to get to Carmichael and you're going to be stopped there forever because with school starting, there's no stoplights there now. I can even be at that intersection at 12:30, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, trying to make a left-hand turn onto Carmichael. You can't. You wait forever. So now you're adding all these people. You're going to be adding the baseball field or whatever else is going into that other subdivision. I don't know if any of you guys live up near this intersection. It is atrocious. You cannot get through. And now what is going to prevent all these people that are going to be exiting from Industrial and exiting onto Mayor Road, near Brookstone? Who's going to prevent them from coming down the private drive of Stone Creek private road and then taking our little alley and jotting out to O'Keefe? People are doing that already now. So how are you going to be controlling this? I think that I agree with Roger. The consideration should have been there for stoplights, for how are you going to control the traffic if in the future we plan to bring all these people in. That doesn't make sense.
If I could cite the traffic study one more time. I know, you guys don't want to hear probably any more about it, but bear with me. In the study, they talk about trip distribution and assignment in regards to the proposed residential development. So they say they broke it down into percent traffic distribution by each road. And so that being said, the large majority, 60%, they were anticipating would go to and from the north on Carmichael Road, so heading north along Carmichael Road. Another 30% would go to and come back from the south on Carmichael Road. And then 7% would go to and from the north on O'Keefe Road, 2% to and from the north on Industrial Street, 1% to and from the north on Aspen Drive, and then 0% to and from the north on River Ridge Road. So just wanted to cite that so you guys are aware.
Mayor, this is Mary Claire. I just have a question on what, if I'm reading the agenda right, it's discussion and possible action on a concept development plan review. So that is the agenda item. My understanding is that we are to vote on tonight. So I'm just not sure how this additional traffic and so forth conversation plays into that or not, or how that moves this agenda item.
All right, well, that's a point well taken, but we do have a lot of the neighbors there, the people that are going to be affected by this, and it's an opportunity for them to speak, so.
No, I understand that, but my question is with what's based on the agenda and with all of these concerns, is this something that we missed along the road of this plan? I don't mean it along the road, but I mean, is this something that we should have talked about before? Or I'm just confused because my understanding is, so I feel like we're kind of further down the road based on the agenda than I think the conversation seems to be. So is there something we missed along the way in having this traffic conversation?
The law of unintended consequences. We've passed this subdivision all the way along, all the way through, and it's brought to a head the traffic problems that we've all known are out there.
Looks like Mike Brunner is raising his hand. Do you want to say anything, Mike?
Mike?
Yes. My wife, Bonnie, and I just made the purchase on Stone Creek at 1913. So we are the first house in the southwest corner of that intersection. And I can tell you, we are looking out our south living room window exactly at where that entrance would be, out our patio door. And the idea that there's going to be however many units, 150 units or 80 units with 2 cars per unit coming in and out of an entrance exit is an atrocious, it's going to be an atrocious view. I am heavily against there being an entrance exit on Mayor Road. If the entrance exit should be put at the back of the road on the south side off of the cul-de-sac where there will not be a traffic hazard until at least they get out here, out to Mayor Road. Has that been looked at?
Is that it, Mike?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Jeff? You unmute.
I've got a couple of concerns, and everybody's talking about traffic. I'm kind of worried about maintenance and everything else. Who's going to keep up the maintenance on this building? Basically, they said at the beginning of this development that they were going to do a lot of different things. They were going to fix Mayor Road. They moved Mayor Road 6 feet over into tall grass area, and they moved that over. They were supposed to make sure that they kept up with all the sidewalk cleanings in the wintertime. The city had to do that. They wouldn't do that. They are also supposed to keep up with DNR and different city plans on how they build houses, and they're supposed to keep them under a certain footage. They went over that. Again, there's so many things that they have missed. They have on the south west corner, they cut down trees. They just leave them there. There's piles of brush, everything else. I brought it up to the city. The city says that the city attorney doesn't want to do anything about them, and we'll just leave there. They were supposed to leave a whole row of trees on the south side of the road. They decided earlier this spring that they would take those out. And now I see that they clear cut it down on the southeast section, which again, they were supposed to leave a row of trees down on that road by the YMCA and down there. And they decided to clear cut that. Basically everything that they're doing, it seems like they are doing whatever they want and then asking for forgiveness afterwards. There were so many times that the attorney mentioned improvements to this, improvements, but are they really improving if they're not keeping up with the sidewalks, if they're not keeping up with the lawn service, if they just planted the trees? They were supposed to plant the trees before they put in the houses. They've got trees that are right on the road that are going to be 40-foot trees. They're going to go halfway onto the road. There is no consideration. They just want to make their money. They want to get in. But again, who is going to be maintaining this apartment building? Who is the person? Obviously, Creative Homes is not even wanting to deal with this, but does anybody know who's going to maintain it so that it keeps the property value up and going without all this other garbage that's going to be taking place and into that area? Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Jeff.
Well, and I'm happy to answer the maintenance question. Unfortunately, I don't believe our development is garbage, and I'm disappointed that that's the comment. But we've got active construction through the neighborhood, and we've worked in partnership with the city on nearly each and every one of the comments that Jeff made. With respect to the apartment building itself, it is the intent of the developer to own that building. And so, not only is it construction, but it's ownership by Dick Morris and the group involved in building that. But I would say that if you look at where we were a year and a half ago with Old Mayor Road, which was a city issue, frankly, and that the city didn't have any dollars to replace. Which is new when you look at those sidewalks, when you look at the development that's down there. There has been a considerable amount of work and improvement to that particular area, and it may be a process to getting to being fully and finally built out and completed on the site. But we do believe that there's significant value that's been brought to this area and significant improvement in a road that really had no place on the city's roadway improvement plan anytime in the near future. And so that shouldn't be lost in this, and that the developers are contributing to the improvement of this entire area. And we don't take comments like Mr. Mazinski's lightly, because we do think that we're making a considerable contribution to the community in those particular neighborhoods.
Nick, I agree with you, and I do appreciate what you have done.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
I just have a comment. They keep talking about the proposal and the plan. In the original proposal, was there any mention of apartment buildings? Because when they're marketing all of these units, with their model homes and that kind of thing, there's absolutely no mention of a apartment building coming in. They're marketing them as single, twin homes, etc. But so I think the people that are buying in there right now are being misled as well.
It's a really good question to kind of go back and take a look at this, because the proposed use has changed. Originally, when we came in, Summit Ridge was going to be single family, South Point townhomes, and then a higher density in that front area. And that's where we had discussions with the Plan Commission, and the Plan Commission was not in favor of a high density use. And so we went back and we looked at condos on that site. We got it approved for condos. And what we found at that point is that the market didn't bear that out. The banks wouldn't lend against condos. Condos in this particular market are not a product that will sell in the form that we could build them in one single building, which is why we're back here with this proposed apartment complex. But here's what we know. What we know is that this property has been zoned for multifamily use since it came into the city. What we know is that there's a need for about 1,400 apartment units in and around the Hudson area, to include Woodbury and Stillwater, and there's a significant need. We also know that people can't get to live in the city of Hudson to buy a house for under a median of about $300,000. And so for those that want to live and work and enjoy our community, there needs to be another form of housing, and that's what this property has always been slated for. And so it's no surprise to people coming in that this is the transition to a little higher density. That's always been part of our plan. And what we're trying to do is approach this from a reasonable perspective, again, to partner with the needs of the city of Hudson and to build something that everybody can be proud of. And hopefully that stands a test of time here as a new apartment building on the city's main corridor.
I have a question. This is Michael Reisdorf, Stone Creek. Mayor Road. How many lanes is Mayor Road supposed to be?
No.
Can anybody answer that question?
It's two, but I believe there are some turn lanes. I don't recall what the final plan called for in terms of turn lanes and where they're located, but it's two primary lanes, east and west.
Okay. Did they go ahead and build Mayor Road before they started with this apartment, thinking that they're going to have an apartment, and they changed it? Because the way I understood is that those trees were going to stay up eventually, and they were going to have pathways through the trees, and that was going to be a green area. And then they changed it as it was going to be a business area, and now it's going to be residential. So it seems to change all the time. So my question was, did they go ahead and build Mayor Road thinking that that was going to be a green area and no residential?
No, we built Mayor Road as part of the approvals to build the single-family housing development and the townhomes. This entire property was slated for development, and we developed it in phases. But it was always intended to be developed for residential purposes across all three portions of the property. It was just a matter of density and particular use in each area. But it was always slated to be residential, even though at one point we looked at a business use on the main level. The primary use of the buildings on this particular site would have been residential.
Okay.
Anybody else?
This is Doug Rowan. I've got one, I guess, question getting back to the pedestrian bike traffic from the beginning of this that maybe the developer can address on their property. Since the pathway that's on the property going to the south dead ends on a private road, Riverview Drive, what will the developer do to ensure that the traffic, foot traffic, bike traffic, and other traffic doesn't just turn on to Riverview Drive, the private road, but stays on the developer's property, since that's the only place that trail actually goes at this point in time, unless they cross Carmichael Road to go to the factory. So that's, I guess, one question. And the recommendation I would make for the Plan Commission is to request that Land DevCo resolve all of the violations and issues at Summit Ridge and South Point prior to approval of the expanded development of this new facility. Namely, last week, trees were planted as part of the landscape plan that the city approved, but they were planted so close to Riverview Drive that they, by design, will be blocking access to the houses on that road. They're only 5 feet from the property line, and yet there'll be 40-foot spread trees. That should be resolved. There's a landfill that was created in the Summit Ridge area that still has not been removed after now 8 months of conversation since it was first created and then reburied on the same property. I think that should be resolved. And numerous other complaints that Land DevCo has not responded to, as well as their attorney, Mr. Vivian. So I would recommend that all those issues get resolved and violations get resolved prior to approval of any additional development on the property. The other issue is the violating the conditional use permit guidelines on the height of the structures, as well as NR 118, which Land Devco did make commitments in multiple meetings that they would honor in the development of Summit Ridge.
You're shocking us. I mean, who has, where did all this stuff come up, and who's kept track of it? Has this just been you, or is anybody in the city aware of it? I mean, what?
Mike Johnson, Rich O'Connor, Mike Mraz, Aaron Reeves. In the city, Jerry Green has had numerous emails and voicemails with no response. Nick Vivian has been kind enough to respond, but basically saying they're done and don't intend to do anything on any of these issues.
Kathy Munkitrick, the DNR, Creative. So yeah, there's a lot of conversation and discussion that's gone on over the past.
Are these legitimate issues, Mike?
Yeah, there's some issues that we need to bring resolution to, and I want that as much as Mr. Rowan does. I think it's important that we get those things put to bed so that
Okay.
everybody, so we can do what we can.
Yeah, I don't want to dwell on it. Just that's a surprise.
Well, and it's not a surprise from the perspective that it's an active development site, and I understand that Doug has raised his concerns. He's communicated them with Mike. We've worked in partnership with the city. Some of these things are just disagreements that Doug has with respect to how the development should happen. And we've worked with our contractors and with the city. Some of them have been a matter of timing in terms of tree planting. And so it's not uncommon, like any other active development site, that there are meetings out on site. We've met with the city regarding Mayor Road and wedging in the fall and grinding the wedge in the spring. We've met on other issues. And so to say that the developer has not taken any action to be responsive to the city is just factually incorrect. And it's not realistic here. We've worked with Mike. We've responded to the concerns that the city has. Is there work left to be done? Sure. And part of this is the fact that we developed it and sold a number of these lots to Creative Homes, and Creative has been a partner in this as well. And so as Mike indicates, it's not as simple as saying, well, the developer didn't do this or the developer didn't do that. It's a matter of identifying what's really at issue, what really needs to be done. And as we've worked with the city, as there have been issues that have required us to take action, we've taken action. I can tell you, and Mike can probably confirm, that we're on the phone regularly throughout the course of the week, working on various different issues on our projects. It's a matter of how these things get done. And, oftentimes the public doesn't see the work that goes on behind the scenes to actually try to resolve some of these things. But they take time, and they're really not of surprise and shouldn't be. And so as we look at this project, I mean, this project is really separate and distinct. We have our obligations under the development agreements for Summit Ridge and South Point. We're obligated to comply with those agreements. We are, and this is a different process here as we look to move forward with this particular building.
So, Nick, what is the status of removal of the landfill then?
Doug, that's a discussion we can take offline, and we can have that discussion with the city. I know you have a particular perspective on it, and we have a different perspective, and it's not appropriate for this setting. But I'm happy to have a conversation with you and with Mike and discuss our various viewpoints on that.
Yeah, but Nick, I do have to say that the development agreement is with the developer, not Creative. So I don't want you to pass that buck.
And I'm certainly not. All I'm saying is that it's a complex development where you have various different parties. Creative has some responsibilities, frankly. We have the
I have it to you though. You have it to us as a city.
Absolutely. And that's why the developer posts a significant surety to ensure that this stuff gets done. And so I'm not trying to sidestep any responsibility, because we absolutely have both our responsibilities under the development agreement and our responsibility and our obligation to be a responsible developer within the city, particularly as a landowner and as a party that's going to own this building in the long term.
I have a question regarding when you were talking about something about homes and townhomes, and the original plan was for condos, but the condos didn't work out for whatever reason. So then you changed your plan to do an apartment building. Well, I mean, none of us were notified of that. So we want to change our plans too and have you put in traffic lights and change the entrance and the exit of where this apartment building will be. I mean, condo didn't work out, so you changed your plan. That's not fair to us residents that are living in this area when it comes to all the traffic.
From the perspective of the city's code, we proposed a condo project that was of the same number of units, I think 88 units. The density is exactly the same. And under the city's code, condos and apartments are both treated as multifamily. There is no difference under the city's code. So whether we call them condominiums or whether we call them apartments or whether you call them, large scale 4 to 6 family homes, or whatever it turns out to be, that the use and the density are still exactly the same. There's no change. There's not a required zoning change. There's not a required comprehensive plan change. And so when the city considered this type of plan previously, whether it was apartments or whether it was condominiums under the city's code, it's exactly the same use.
Okay, well, thank you, but still an apartment building sure looks a lot different than a condo. We're talking going up versus spreading out is how I perceive it.
How many stories is still going to be 3 stories?
Correct.
Why 3 stories? You're cutting it almost in half.
Now, three stories.
Units before, you're going down 85, not quite half. But why are 3 stories?
Three stories is the layout that works for this property. When we look at it and review and account for all of the city's requirements, the city requires 2 parking stalls per unit. One of those parking stalls has to be covered, which means that one is surface. There are certain setback requirements. There are other requirements, and certainly we wanted to include the amenities that we've got included in this plan as well. And so when you put all of that together, in order to get the minimum density of what we're looking here, which is significantly less than what we proposed before, 3 stories is how this all packages together. And there was never a plan to spread this out in a different form. You just can't do it, frankly, with the city's parking requirements and with the setback requirements. It was always structured to be a multi-level building just to comply with the city's code.
So 3 stories plus the underground parking?
Correct.
So it'll be how many underground spots?
Well, one per unit, so 85.
Okay. My question back to the city: what's the plan? What are you going to do for stoplights and traffic? I mean, okay, Nick's saying he's done. You're saying he's done what he's supposed to. What is the city going to do about the residents up here? We've lived up here. We're paying taxes, and are we just going to get nothing out of this? Just to have to deal with it?
Well, I think to Randy's point, I think that it's time that the Public Safety Committee take another look at. I have written down Industrial and Mayor, O'Keefe and Mayor, and then Mayor and Carmichael. I think that's an important first step. We also, obviously, a traffic study was done on St. Croix Meadows, was done on this property, as well as the Carmichael Road Corridor study that we completed, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago now. So there's been a lot of data collected on the actual corridor itself, and maybe it's time to dust that off. And I think public safety is well suited to take that on and and come up with maybe some recommendations to incrementally, improve the scenario out there.
What do you need to get approved to put stop signs in on O'Keefe? 2 stop signs.
So that would go to public safety first. So Mr. Morissette is the chair of that committee. They would take that up and they would make a recommendation to council at that point.
I think what happens a lot now, we see is a lot of people, like I said, come off of Carmichael. They don't want to go down and go through the stoplights, so they fly down O'Keefe and go down that way to miss stoplights. And I think that's where we're seeing a lot of the traffic. So now you're going to add more people coming through. If you put a stop sign, that'll change I think you're going to have to reduce that speed too through there. But I think that'll help a lot if you at least put a stop signs in there. Would be a start. I don't know what Randy thinks about that.
Yeah, I'm going to put that on our agenda for our next meeting. Unfortunately, we can't put it on this Thursdays, but it'll be the first Thursday in August.
Okay, thanks, Randy.
All right, anybody else? We have a motion? Anybody?
Can I ask who made the motion? I missed that.
I nobody yet.
Oh, okay.
Is there a motion?
Randy, are you comfortable with the motion if we tie in the traffic study and piece, or I don't want to say study to you, but try in that, because you'll yell at me, but tie in
come on.
the traffic piece, based on the comments that we've heard tonight and that you bringing it to public safety. Are we comfortable, acting on what's on the agenda in terms of moving forward on the concept development plan with the recommendations from staff and the further review and discussion on the traffic pieces?
Yes.
So if I will make that motion to approve the concept development plan review with the staff recommendations and with the traffic, how do you want to word it, Randy? Not study, but traffic review, or, based on the residents' comments tonight, how do you want to word that?
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, I don't have a doubt in my mind that O'Keefe and Hanley will probably get some stop signs, but the bigger issue is the funding for Mayor and Carmichael for stop lights, which I think it is time for that to be done there.
That's a separate issue. I will second her motion with the same conditions.
It's a separate issue, Fred, but it needs to be addressed.
I understand.
On a parallel with everything.
I understand.
Mary Claire, did you have anything more to say there?
Well, no, I just wanted for clarity for Emily and for myself then. So how are we exactly wording that, Randy? Because I think that traffic light isn't necessarily, unless, correct me if I'm wrong, a part of the specific project. That might be more on the city side, or?
It is.
Okay, so, okay. So are you comfortable with the plan? Are you comfortable with the motion, Randy?
Yeah, but Frank was trying to say something.
I'm sorry.
Where isn't that Mayor Carmichael intersection going to be, or is it pre-wired for a light already?
No, we did that at Brackey in Carmichael.
Oh, it was not Mayor. Okay.
Correct. Right, Mike?
Correct.
All right, we've got a motion and a second in front of us. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved.
Mr. Mayor, can I just ask a question based on that motion?
Sure.
So your process would indicate then that we would move forward at the next Plan Commission meeting with our final development plan. I presume that your your motion and your action here doesn't prevent us from moving forward. The Public Safety Committee will still take a look, and we'll be supportive of whatever the Public Safety Committee comes up with respect to O'Keefe and industrial. But are we permitted then to move forward to the next Plan Commission meeting? Is that a yes from Mr. Morissette?
Yes, assuming we have everything that we need from you in response to our satisfaction and all the comments.
Understood.
That you've received.
Understood. Wonderful. Thank you, guys.
All right. Discussion and possible action on a certificate of compliance review for Madison Avenue Wine and Spirits to operate a winery and distillery with limited food service at 1510 Swayze Street, Suite B. Kelly Yoakum.
Right, so Madison Avenue Wine and Spirits had received a conditional use permit for operation at 1510 Swayze Street in June 2019, but now we are looking to actually downgrade the conditional use permit to a certificate of compliance, being that we have since updated code requirements for such a use in a light industrial zone. So that being said, staff is recommending approval of the certificate of compliance with the conditions listed below.
I'll move we approve.
I'll second.
Motion second to approve. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion and possible action on a recommendation to council regarding temporary zoning for those lands included in the Faith Community Church petition for direct annexation by unanimous approval of parcels 020-1081-60-000, parcel 020-1081-50-000, parcel 20-1081-90-000, and 020-1082-40-000.
Thank you. So per state statutes, we are to approve a temporary zoning designation when approving an annexation petition such as this one. The properties in the town of Hudson are currently zoned as residence. And it includes a church and a single family residence that's currently unoccupied on the site. Based on the existing uses of the property, city staff is recommending temporarily zoning it to agriculture residential, with the plan to anticipate a future rezoning to possibly either public or single family residential. With that being said, staff is recommending that we temporarily rezone the properties to ag residential with the listed condition that the municipal boundary review be completed and approved by the Wisconsin Department of Administration.
And this again is to accommodate the water connection.
Yep.
Faith Community. Yep.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Motion second to approve. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion and possible action on a downtown design review for 511 2nd Street, Suite 203, Nicollet Law Office.
Thank you. So as with all sign permit applications we get for downtown, this one also requires a downtown design review certificate to be approved. With that being said, Nicollet Law Office has submitted applications to install a couple signs at 511 2nd Street, one wall sign and another would be a projecting sign. The sizes being 15 square feet for the wall sign, which will be unlit, and the projecting sign is proposed to be 3.33 square feet in size, extending about 2.7 feet out of the wall, and it'll also be unlit. Just one thing to note too with this property, there is a second business tenant site up on the second floor of the building. So we made sure to work with Nicollet Law Office to ensure that there is enough wall space for that second tenant to put a wall sign up for themselves as well. That being said, we are recommending approval of the downtown design review certificate and sign permit applications for 511 2nd Street.
One thing here quickly. So this is Russell Nicollet, obviously with Nicollet Law Office. So the actual application is for 517. It has 511 as our mailing address because we currently reside in 511, but we're moving over to 517. So the application is actually for 517, the building, the old Dibbo. So if you look at the picture and everything we submitted, that's for 517, where we will be moving as soon as that project, we get a certificate of occupancy, which has been an ongoing process because they're still under construction. So that's where we're asking for the signage to be placed.
I'll move we approve it to 517.
I'll second it.
All right, we have a motion, a second. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved.
Thank you.
So that's it for the agenda. I don't have anything. Anybody?
I have one question, and it's because I've fielded some calls. Obviously with the Carmichael thing, like with the church hooking up to the city water, I've had residents ask me, how do they get hooked up now to city water that are bordering as is the church? I've said, call the city people. I mean, I don't know what do you say on something like that? I mean, anyway, I've been getting those calls and I don't know what to do with them.
Fred, where do they live?
On the corner, Lubke.
So what I can give you a kind of a brief answer to that, and that is, the DNR has told us that, you know, as a municipal water provider, that we have an obligation to serve them because of their contaminated well.
Okay.
So obviously the only way that we can serve water to the contaminated well is through annexation. We cannot serve property outside of municipal boundaries as they exist. So that's what happened there.
Okay.
Or is what's happening.
But because it happened, you can see it's a natural.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you're gonna, if you haven't got, I'm sure you've already heard some of this, but anyway, I was asked the question and I just didn't know what to say.
Yep.
And it, you know, I don't know how, you know, that's a good answer. I wish everybody knew the answer you just gave, because then that clarifies it too, that you're not, there's no favorites being played, that kind of thing.
Well, and to keep things broad, obviously, because they aren't on the agenda, it's also important to just kind of mention that, you know, when we do these annexations, you know, as we talked about earlier, we do those capital cost studies too. So when somebody wants to come in, it's not as simple as, say, hooking up to water. There's going to be significant, oftentimes, capital costs that a developer or whoever is going to have to put in, you know, to be incorporated to the city. So just something to also keep in mind.
No, thank you very much. That you helped. Appreciate it. Anybody else? I move to adjourn if we're done.
Okay.
All right, motion second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. We stand adjourned. Thanks, everybody.